Most people don't notice when they stop being themselves. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small, acceptable ways. You start by being polite, considerate, easy to deal with, and that sounds like a good thing, until it goes a little too far. You say yes when you mean no. You agree just to avoid explaining. You smile to keep things smooth. You stay quiet when something bothers you, not because you don't have an opinion, but because it feels easier not to create tension. So you adjust, constantly. You choose words carefully. You soften your tone. You remove anything that could be misunderstood. You try to make everything land well. And over time, you get good at it. Really good. People describe you as calm, easygoing, mature, someone who doesn't create problems. And again, that works. Until you start noticing something strange. You don't really know what you want anymore. Not clearly. When someone asks your opinion, you hesitate. Not because you don't have one, but because you're scanning first. What makes sense here? What fits better? What avoids friction? And by the time you answer, it's already adjusted, filtered, safe. And this doesn't only happen in conversations. It happens in decisions, in relationships, in how you spend your time. You say yes to things you don't care about. You stay in conversations you don't enjoy. You maintain dynamics that don't feel right, not because you're forced to, but because you don't know how to disrupt them. So you compensate. You explain yourself too much. You justify simple preferences. You turn small decisions into long reasoning processes, just to make sure everything sounds acceptable, even when no one asked for an explanation, even when no one was questioning you. And the more you do this, the more something starts to fade. Your directness, your clarity, your sense of internal reference. Because every decision goes through negotiation. Nothing comes out clean. Everything is slightly edited, slightly shaped, slightly adjusted. And at first, it feels like control, like you're managing yourself well. But after a while, it starts to feel like distance. You're present in your life, but not fully inside your own choices. You're always considering something else, someone else, some reaction that hasn't even happened. And this creates a specific kind of confusion. You function normally. You do what needs to be done. But when it comes to you, your preferences, your direction, your voice, it's unclear, not absent, just hard to access. And in social situations, this becomes even more visible. You read people quickly. You adjust your energy. You match their tone. You avoid saying things that might create friction. You prioritize harmony, even when it costs you something. And that cost is not obvious at first. It doesn't create immediate problems. It creates accumulation. Moments where you held back. Moments where you agreed unnecessarily. Moments where you were more pleasant than honest. Individually, they don't seem important, but together, they shape how you show up. And eventually, they shape how you see yourself. You start associating your value with being easy, with being agreeable, with not creating discomfort. So when a situation requires something else, directness, boundaries, honesty, you hesitate, not because you're incapable, but because it conflicts with a version of you that's been reinforced. And now, you're in a position where everything works on the surface, but internally, something feels off. You're doing what makes sense, but it doesn't feel precise. You're saying things, but not exactly what you mean. You're present, but not fully expressed. And the hardest part is, there's no clear moment to point to, no obvious mistake, just a pattern, built slowly, reinforced quietly, until it became normal to adjust yourself. Before you even try to be real, at some point you start to see it. Not clearly, but enough to feel that something doesn't fully align. And with that awareness comes a small impulse to stop adjusting, to say something more direct, to choose without calculating so much. And right there, you hesitate, not because you don't know what to do, but because you know exactly what it might change. When you stop adjusting, you stop being predictable. And people are used to a version of you, a consistent one, easy to read, easy to respond to. That's part of why your life works. So the moment you move outside that pattern, you interrupt something, not dramatically, but enough to be noticed. A pause, a different reaction, a subtle shift in tone, and your attention locks onto it immediately. You read it, you interpret it, and almost without thinking, you correct yourself. Not fully, just enough to smooth things out again. That's the mechanism. It doesn't stop you. It redirects you. You move, then adjust. You express, then soften. You choose, then reconsider. So from the outside, nothing really changes. And from the inside, it feels like you tried, but something pulled you back. That something isn't fear in the obvious sense. It's calibration. You've learned how to maintain dynamics, how to keep things stable, how to avoid subtle disconnection. And you do it well. So well that breaking the pattern feels inefficient, unnecessary, even risky. Because now it's not just about you. It's about everything around you. If you change how you show up, conversations shift, responses change, roles become unclear, and you don't fully control that process. So instead of moving freely, you start negotiating internally. How much can I change without creating friction? How far can I go without disrupting this? And that creates a limit, an invisible boundary, not imposed from the outside, maintained from within. You try to move forward, but only within what feels acceptable. And that's why the change never fully happens. Because real alignment doesn't stay within old limits. It moves them, even slightly. And that slight movement is enough to create discomfort, not because something is wrong, but because something is different. And different has no script, no guarantee, no immediate feedback telling you you're doing it right, just uncertainty. And most people interpret that uncertainty as a signal to stop, to return, to stabilize again. But if you stay in that moment a little longer, something becomes clear. The discomfort isn't coming from the action. It's coming from the absence of control over the outcome. You're used to knowing how things will go, how people will respond, how interactions will unfold. Now you don't, and that lack of predictability feels exposed. So your system tries to close the gap quickly by returning to what's known, what's proven, what keeps things running smoothly. But once you see this, really see it, something shifts, not in what you do, in how you interpret the moment. You start noticing the exact point where you pull back, not after, during. You feel the impulse and the adjustment trying to override it. And for a second, you don't move, you just observe. And that pause is new, because before there was no pause, just reaction. Now there's space, small, but enough to question. Is this necessary? Not is this safe? Not is this right? Just, is this necessary? And sometimes the answer is no, and nothing collapses, nothing breaks. The moment passes, but something stays, a small piece of evidence that maybe not every adjustment is required. And that's where change actually begins, not in bold action, but in reduced certainty. At some point, you stop trying to figure everything out because you realize clarity doesn't come first. Evidence does. You don't think your way into alignment. You build proof of it, quietly, through small actions that don't look significant at the time. So instead of asking, what's the perfect way to live for myself? You shift to something simpler. What is one thing I can stop adjusting right now? Not everything, just one moment in your day where you don't reshape your response. You say it a little more directly, not aggressively, not dramatically, just without editing it as much. And you watch what happens, not control it, just to see. Most of the time, nothing breaks. The conversation continues. The moment passes, but something changes internally. You didn't override yourself. That matters. That's the first type of shift. Not expression at full intensity. Reduction of unnecessary filtering. The second shift is less visible, but more structural. You stop explaining yourself so much, not externally, internally. You notice how often you justify your own preferences, how quickly you try to make them acceptable, even to yourself. I want this, but I feel this, but, and you start removing the but, not to convince anyone, just to see what remains without it. I want this. Pause. No defense. No reasoning. Just a statement. At first, it feels incomplete, almost uncomfortable, because you're used to supporting everything you feel, making it valid, making it reasonable. But over time, you realize something important. Not everything needs to be justified to exist. And when you stop constantly negotiating with yourself, your internal signal becomes clearer, less distorted, easier to recognize. The third shift is slower, and it requires patience. You begin tolerating small amounts of social friction, not creating conflict, not forcing anything, just not immediately correcting it. A slight misunderstanding, a moment of silence, a different reaction from someone. Before, you would move quickly to fix it, to smooth it out. Now, you wait, a few seconds longer than usual. You let the moment exist as it is, and you notice something. Most friction resolves itself, or it wasn't as significant as it felt, or it reveals something real about the dynamic, something you couldn't see before, because you were always adjusting too quickly. And this is where things start to change, not dramatically, but structurally. Your behavior shifts slightly, but your perception shifts more. You stop assuming that everything needs to be managed, that every reaction needs a response, that every moment needs correction. And with that, your presence changes. You're less reactive, less calculated, more stable. Not because you're controlling more, but because you're interfering less. And slowly, almost quietly, your life starts to feel different. Not perfect, not fully resolved, but more yours. Because now, some of your decisions are actually direct. Some of your responses are actually unfiltered. Some of your preferences are actually intact. And that's enough. At first, you don't need a complete transformation. You need accumulation. Moments where you didn't override yourself. Moments where you didn't explain yourself away. Moments where you didn't rush to fix what felt slightly uncomfortable. And those moments build something. Not confidence in the usual sense. Certainty. Not about outcomes. About yourself. That you can act without constantly adjusting. That you can exist without constantly managing perception. And over time, that becomes your new reference. Not the old pattern. Not the automatic correction. But something quieter. More direct. More stable. And one day, without noticing exactly when it happened, you stop asking, is this acceptable? And start moving from something simpler. This is mine. If this made you pause, even for a moment, that already means something. Most people don't stop long enough to see this. If you want more content like this, quiet, honest, and actually useful, subscribe to the channel. And if this resonated with you, leave a like, not for the algorithm, just as a small signal that this is something worth exploring further.